Hi everybody, my name is Scott Ewers. I'm currently doing a several part series on the last several years of my life from 2018 until present, and the events that had occurred when I went to work at Irving Shipbuilding in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Uh, I went to uh, I went to work at JDIrving in February 4th of 2019. Before that, I was living out in Ecumsecum looking after my disabled mother. I'd taken a long break from my career. I was like systems analyst and like a programmer, software engineer. I didn't get into anything too detailed, but very good like technical person. I had a lot of technical skills overall, and I had taken time off after my mother got sick, and I'd lived out in the country for 7 years, I think, 6 for sure, 6, and yeah, I was really excited to get back into the city, and 'cause that's like 2 hours away from here. I'm way out in the middle of nowhere out here. There's nothing out here, right? Like it's nice to just relax and get back to like nature and finding who you are and stuff like that. But really, it's very hard to live like a good social life out here, and find a partner and those types of things. And when I went to work in the city, I didn't have a lot of money. I could hardly buy any new clothes because I spent it all on my situation out here and making sure my mother's okay, whatever little bit of money I do have. And I make my own fun of my own education. I've got the internet, I've got books, I've got YouTube, and I've got the outdoors. So learn, go outdoors, learn, go outdoors, learn, go outdoors, and then, learn outdoors. And I love that. I love all aspects of science and learning, whether it's, indoors, outdoors, physics, or, gardening, right? The ideas and the process behind it. I think it's all beautiful. It's all connected in some sort of way, obviously, and I think it's all really wonderful. There aren't too many topics I don't like. I get a little woozy about medical stuff. I think it's because I think about it too much, but anyway. So yeah, I went to work back in the city, and I was able to stay with some friends. And I want to say to them, you reached out to me and were like, look, do you want to stay here? And you knew what that meant to me. You knew I wanted to get my life started again. You knew how excited I was about that. And I really want to say thank you very much. Thank you. And I love you. Thank you. So, I started working there, and right away I was harassed. It was pretty bad. And I tried to, just tried to deal with it quietly. And I had employees come to me being like, oh, we're proud of how you're dealing with yourself. And it's like, I shouldn't have to be dealing with this, right? So I tried to deal with it. I reported it to HR and was just like, I just need it to stop. I don't want them to get in trouble, but it just has to stop. I gotta drive back and forth all the time. I can't be going into a job being harassed and stuff like that. It just isn't, it's not worth it. And I really felt something else was going on, right? Like I just wanted it all to stop. And just before I had asked for it to stop, my my manager had asked me, if I could help them with something pretty important, and because they couldn't figure it out, and I was able to, and that sent my name way up the ladder, and then they gave credit to other people involved, but not to me, which was fine. But other employees came up to me and were like, why did they give these other people credit but not you? And I was like, I think because they see me and they're kind of embarrassed by it, so I'm kind of flattered by it because they obviously see me. If you guys are coming up to me talking about this, they must see that as well. And I think they're a little bit embarrassed by it, and I'm flattered by it. There's nothing wrong with it from either side. Some of those employees worked there for a long time. It's not, I just stumbled in there. Um, and I'm sure their value was a lot more over time. And I didn't really let it bother me too much. But then after the complaint, stuff got really bad, and it wasn't with my manager because that kind of like really tapered off a bit. I really want that to be known that, no matter what, they were very smart. And I'm sure they were under a lot of pressure also. But I think they thought that I was there for their job, and I really wasn't there to come after your job. I really wasn't, and I'm sorry that that's how this all played out. Unfortunately, there does appear to be a history with this person, and it wasn't just isolated with me, which I only came to find out much later on after employees seen me dealing with this, and they felt more comfortable coming talking to me about it. In fact, employees just started to bypass them altogether and come speak to me. And I had to tell them how inappropriate that was. That's what I mean. I needed that to stop because it was bringing a lot of negative attention to me, and they already sent a lot of negative attention my way, and but it is what it is. I think that the employees were really worried about serious issues, and they didn't know what to do, and they seen somebody who was like, I was able to deal with the problems respectfully and professionally, but also very intelligent at the same time, and was able to provide help every single time to anybody who interacted with me, and I was very kind to everyone. I'm sure I wasn't perfect, and there were things I could have done better, but overall, I do think that like I tried to be a good person, and I don't know. And so, it was kind of like heated there for a bit, but I didn't do anything. I never yelled at that person. I never degraded them, and I always made sure that it was known that they were intelligent. And that was never the problem. I just wanted it to stop. I didn't want to change them. And so, I think I filed the complaint about April 10th, and then by April 18th, I got pointed at in traffic by an unmarked police vehicle, and they gave me a speeding ticket. And that morning, I was on my way back from the country, and I had to go to a doctor's appointment. So, that's a 4-hour round trip, and I had to come out and look after my mother. So, like, so if we jump forward from there, I'm just there doing my job and everything, and then in May of 2019, under some really suspicious circumstances, my wallet goes missing. And yes, I'll admit that it seems like it was in my car, and it could have gone here and it could have gone there, which is why I never raised any issue about it until about 2021, when I found the really concerning information regarding it. I mean, I kind of had a feeling, but that's just a feeling. You don't have evidence. So the way I kind of look at things is, if you've got a feeling about something, let's quantify it. And I either consider it a non-zero or a zero. So a zero is basically anything under 1, right? So it's like you can have a feeling, you can have your suspicions, but it's not really a thing. But when it gets to a 1%, you've got a good reason to believe that that's at least a 1 in 100% chance, or 1 in 100 chance that it's a real thing. So my wallet gets stolen, and they don't touch the change or anything in my cubbyhole. There's like other stuff they could have taken, but they didn't take it. They just took my wallet, and I don't keep cash in there. I don't keep much in there whatsoever. And I canceled the cards immediately. My friends were like, "No, somebody obviously took it because I seen you with it, and it's obviously like stolen. You didn't drop it somewhere." I canceled the cards, and I thought it was gone. I was like, well, it could have been anybody or anyone, right? And you're never going to find it, because if somebody stole it, they're just going to throw it in a garbage can or throw it in the woods, and that's that. So I didn't really think too much of it. And so I think it was about June 2nd, I get a call from Halifax Regional Police that they have my wallet. I said, "Oh, can you come down and get it?" And I was like, "Of course, yeah, that's great." So I went down on the 5th of June to get my wallet, and I went to a room with a lady, and she's like, "Does everything appear to be there?" I was like, "Yeah, it seems to be there." I'm like, "That's weird." I was like, she asked me, "Did you have money in there?" When I was like, "No, I didn't have any money in there." And I explained that it was really weird how it was like taken. They didn't take, and me and like my friends were like wondering, like trying to figure out where it would have gone, why they wouldn't have taken the money in the cubbyhole, why it seemed so like quick, because I'd just gone in the house, like it was very quick process, and I was concerned about it, but not like super concerned, because like I said, maybe a lady of the night. right? But I can't see a lady of the night passing in my wallet to HRP lost and found, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And she's like asking me, she's like, well, where do you think your wallet was found? I'm like, I don't know. That's a good question. I got witnesses, I got GPS logs, I got all this information. Like, I don't know. And I was like, well, where was it found? And she's like, I can't tell you that. It's part of something ongoing. How is something turned into lost and found part of something ongoing? And I'm like, what do you mean ongoing? Like, I'm showing concern too. I'm just like, I don't know where, and everything's here, and it was turned into lost and found. That, and I asked her again, and she's like, no, it's part of something ongoing. And I'm like, okay. I didn't really think much of it because I didn't do anything, right? Because I never had problems with police. I didn't think that they would do something like this, right? Like, I thought that they would. It's a lesson. It's a lesson, right? It's a lesson for everybody. Don't trust the police. Ever. Ever. Don't ever, 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 ever trust them. You know, I spoke of reconciliation. I had hoped for it sincerely. There's no reconciling with those kinds of people. They are just monsters. They will always be monsters. That's why they're drawn to those types of jobs, and there's no way to fix that. But, you know, we'll get back to that. So, you know, I go back to my job, and I tell people how weird it was that that had happened. And I was like, I talked about how weird it was, and was like, well, I don't know why they acted like that. And, so, you know, I went back, I did my job, and by then I was like going swimming every day. You know, I didn't have any problems. I want it known. I didn't have any problems with my man. Like, it stopped after, but I really felt strange about it. Like, something else was going on. And I'd had different comments from the employees. They were like, no, something is going on. Something is going on. And it wasn't like they were whining or complaining. It was just general comments. And you could tell they were just like, something is up. And something was up. And, so, you know, I just went about my job and everything, and I just kind of did my thing, and then, you know, we kind of they had a meeting where they told me they weren't going to renew my contract or whatever. And there's a lot in here between this, right? Like, doing personal reviews and stuff. It was just dirty, and I was just like, stop it, stop it. And you know, I do believe that the phone was turned on in the person's pocket, and they were listening to the conversation, and it was very off-putting, because after the part that would have been the good bit, the phone just rang and they had to go. And I was like, I feel like I'm being, something else is going on here. People are acting different towards me. It seems like some people know, some people don't know. And because, like, some people coming up shaking my hand like I got a job. I was confused. Like, I mean, sincerely confused. In that time period, I had somebody come up to me, and it's just so weird. And so on my like, employees were coming to me saying, you've got to go speak to HR, you've got to go. And it's just like, that's not, they're like, no, you have to. And I'm just like, at this point, like, if they don't come talk to me, it's obviously they did something really bad. Because there's no, people don't act like that. They did something really bad. And so I went to talk to HR, and they basically offered me whatever I wanted. I knew something was up, and I will go into more discussion with this whole thing and my feelings and these employees and stuff, because it's not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong, and I want that known. Not one person did anything wrong or suggested doing anything wrong. Okay? And now that I know about it, know what happened, I can see where information was being back channeled. Like, I can see it pretty clearly now. And I don't know if different times they were baiting me to try to find something out. I don't know, right? But on my last day, that HR manager was acting very weird, and they tried to offer me whatever I wanted, and I was like, I want somebody to contact me. You know, if we're doing this and I get a job, then I want it to be through an interview. I don't want it to be just given to me. I don't think that that's appropriate. And, you know, I do feel something's going on. And I told them, I'm like, I'm a target. Like, how can I stay here? I'm obviously being targeted. I told her that. And I couldn't put my finger on it completely. And she's like, well, I'll have somebody contact you in a week. And as you can imagine, they didn't. Right? And now, the next day after all of this, I had to go put on a parade and do a bunch of public stuff, and everybody asking me about the job and stuff. I'm like, oh, it was great, great, great. I was terrorized. I thought somebody was going to call me. Nobody did. I knew they did something really bad, okay? In that last month, I noticed like that, for sure, that my phone was acting differently. I'd noticed like weird stuff before that, but I started to notice that different like Dutch subreddits and stuff were popping up on my phone. And I was like, what is going on? But then like on the home network where I was staying, they noted the same stuff. And I just, some interactions felt very, very strange, like very strange, and something was going on. People just don't act like that. And the way that I was treated it was just disgusting. It really was. And knowing that that's what they're doing to other people, why would anybody who's intelligent want to go and work in a place like that? Right? That's what speaks to the problems, right? And it's a very real reason why those ships aren't finished, because the talent does not want to go and literally be treated like a fucking dog. They don't want that. It's not a democracy when you're in there building ships or doing that, or in a business, but you don't treat people like dogs. You're not going to get your stuff. If you're in wartime and you need to pump them out as quick as you can, you got to keep people in line. I understand that there's going to be some sort of stern notion, but to be acting like that and to terrify yourselves and your employees, you're not going to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, and you're going to create a lot of cracks and leaks. And then you going and blaming those other people for it, it's like you're creating and facilitating the problem. Yeah, so it turns out that also on the 18th, when I got my speeding ticket, that Toronto Star was able to get their hands on some documents from Halifax Regional Police. Now, what's important here is that in tandem, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, there was something going on called the Wortley Report, and it was basically a report on the process of street checks conducted by Halifax Regional Police. And it was there were a lot of complaints, like a lot of historical complaints about it. That it was targeting black people and minorities and being used, as just obvious, like a tool of racism and fear, tool of terror. No, an actual terror, and that's something we're going to talk about later on. And I think that anybody not on the receiving end of that kind of behavior can't understand it as terror. So the police can't understand it because they're not on the receiving end of that. Right? Not typically. They're on the receiving end of their own kind of fear and their own kind of violence. Right? But they would react with anger. They would react with their gun. They would react with all these different things. Imagine the police coming at you and then acting like that then. You can't do anything. So, I mean, if your argument from the police is that, it's, oh, we don't like it when people come at us like that, and, they should show some respect. Well, what do you think people are going to feel when you act like that with them? It's the same thing. They're just acting the same way you would act, right? You want to be treated with respect, and you want to be treated with dignity, right? They're not asking for anything different. And yes, I understand that some of these people may be violent people, and yeah, stopping them might stop some sort of crime. But the terror you are causing on a larger scale, is that worth it? Those generations of mistrust, is that worth it? No, it's not worth it. Look at the damage. Look at the damage. After the whole George Floyd, look at the damage it has caused, and it will still cause us. It is not worth it. It's not worth it. My opinion. I'm sure there's different officers, and in this case there are officers who disagree, and that's fine. That's why we have to have discussions, and it takes all types, and this is a goddamn fucking democracy, and we all get to talk. And I support their opinions, and I support their right to have an opinion on it. I don't have their right to suggest violence against somebody that doesn't support their opinion or just silencing them. I don't believe cancel culture is the right way. And I don't think that just constantly degrading somebody is the right way. I think that, democracy is you're allowed to get upset, right? You're allowed to disagree. You're allowed to dislike somebody. But in the end, you got to talk about it. That is democracy, right? It's all those good things, it's all them good emotions that we get mad, we get pissed off at each other. But in the end, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk for the better. That's what democracy is. Right? It's not just that some fucking idiot gets to yell over here and some fucking idiot gets to yell over here. Yeah, that's part of it. But a real democracy is then sitting down and saying, why are we yelling? And you don't have a democracy if you can't ask those questions. Right? That's not a democracy. That's just every idiot yelling for themselves. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of this stuff has devolved into. And that's true on both sides, right, left. And that's unfortunate because, in the end, that the police are the ones who ultimately have to deal with it. So, as much as I sit here and talk about it, I'm not the one who has to deal with the outcomes of that. They do. Right? And only a few of them actually get to speak, so the opinions that we see are not necessarily representative of those entire set of police. And then if they do speak, they're out of line, so then you got your leadership having a problem. It's just, what a mess. It's a mess. Right? So then for leadership to not deal with these types of problems and then to leave them on the officers, that's irresponsible. That's what I mean about this. So these types of policy street checks and stuff like that, we need to get rid of it. It's not healthy. It's not. So anyways, we have this whole Wortley report. And, it came out March 27, 2019. And, I think it was like the next day a judge had ruled that, it was obviously that the process of street checks were racist and said it needs to stop. And so the police and everybody just kind of put a hold on everything, and then eventually they would have stopped the actual process, and everybody was kind of expecting that, unfortunately, and because of that, the chief had already planned, and to retire, right? Like this report's going to change things. Right? And everybody kind of knew that, and it needed to take time, and that's why it needed to take time. And that doesn't, just because that person doesn't agree with A, B, and C, doesn't make them racist or anything like that. It means they have their own sets of opinions. Now, in that case, that chief of police, they wanted to delete the data. Now, the last thing you want to tell a group of people, such a large group of people, who are upset by these actions, is that you want to delete the data because that and not understand why they would be like, that's really suspicious. We have all these experiences and you want to delete the data. I mean, if you as a leader don't recognize the issue and the disconnect from yourself and the public in that case, that is an issue, right? So, but that doesn't mean that person was racist. They gave a lot to the community. They gave a lot globally. They've done a lot. And I have no right to judge them in a lot of different capacities, and I wouldn't dare, it would not be appropriate for me to do so. And I want to make sure that individual knows that that's not what I'm doing here. And I support your right to defend yourself, and I support your right to say what you have to say against me. My situation and everything that I have to say. I just ask that you don't retaliate with violence or having me locked up or suggesting somebody do something bad to me, because I think that probably by now, I would never do that to you. Ever. Like, if your house was on fire, I would run in and grab you and your kids. I don't care who you are. And I do have sympathy for your situation. PTSD is no joke. I went through enough stuff in my life, and that's probably nowhere near as traumatic as a lot of the stuff you have gone through, and I can't imagine what that's like, and I don't think that that's a joke. And I am sorry for the damage this world has caused you and so many others. I am. I know what that's like. So anyways, he'd go. He had different things lined up. And, hey, so yeah, they had to get a new chief of police, right? And, so that would have been March, and he would have left 3 days after. And then, April comes around. Now you got April 18th. And you can check, there's an article by Toronto Star posted, and it states that the Halifax Regional Police and the RCMP, and they're kind of like talking to Board of Police Commissioners, like it would appear disingenuous to apologize for the street checks at this time. And when you think about the timing, it kind of would be just to immediately apologize, right? Because like if you're not really assessing as an institution, what should we do to make this seem sincere? How can you just do that in 10 days? Like you need to kind of let it sink in. You need to let people talk about it. You got to try to understand it. You need everybody to get upset or be happy, go home, come back, go to sleep. They got to go through this process so that you can figure out what is the best approach. How are we going to change this together? And so just apologizing right away wouldn't have, I don't think would have been sincere. Yes, an apology should come, but it wouldn't necessarily been sincere. But unfortunately, it also means that the individual that would not apologize because they were the spokesperson would also have to go, because you can't keep this person who wouldn't apologize for this before and is now apologizing, because the question is going to be, well, why didn't you apologize? What did you feel? It's going to be really uncomfortable and really awkward. And plus, they were friends with the chief. So, and this whole sentiment of delete the data, it's like, okay, something has to be done. I understand that. I do not pretend it is an easy decision, and in no way am I trying to demean either one of them. I don't think that's it's not an easy situation to be in. So this would have been about April 18th. So they're talking about this, basically the need for these additional steps. The transfer of this other individual, who would eventually be, his name would be Jim Perrin. He would have been the superintendent and commander of the criminal investigation unit. The chief, Jean-Michel Blaise. Sorry, it's Jean-Michel Michael, if I messed up your name, I really am. But they were friends, and it is what it is. It doesn't mean anything about them as individuals, and nor does it speak to their core character. I don't believe so. This person would have needed to go, and he still got a lot of time to work in him, right? And I'm sure he don't want to retire or anything. He wants to keep doing something, and I bet you he's just like, well, this sucks. But life kind of goes on, and so you got these events happening on the same day as May, and you'll start to see why this starts to become even more concerning. So by about the end of April, I think it was like May 1st, that's when Dan Kinsella would have been announced as new chief of police for Halifax Regional Police. It would have been the day after Jason Kenney would have gotten, I think, affirmed back in as premier of Alberta. And why that's important is because we're going to talk about a company called Postmedia, who's really important to this story. Postmedia was part of their war room. Like, they were very heavily integrated. And around the time Kenney was going to see Doug Ford in Ontario, and it just so happens that Kinsella comes from Ontario, and there were similar questions about around the time of trying to install their own police that were friends or friendly to them. And it's just a general thought. I don't really have a lot of information on it. It's just an interesting feeling, because what you start to see then is this reemergence of another broader discussion about this issue with Mark Norman, who would have been a senior military naval commander, I believe. You can look him up yourself there. And there were accusations of the government towards this individual of, well, you look it up yourself so you can make up your own mind, right? So there was this active court battle going on between this person and the government, and Postmedia and these individuals had started a campaign to be like, they need to drop the charges and all this different stuff. And around the same time, to do with Postmedia, Trump had pardoned Conrad Black, who was, he used to own the National Post, which is now, basically owned by Postmedia. And you've got these different events to do with Postmedia and coming at towards this whole Mark Norman thing. And this would have been regarding Irving shipbuilding. Now, what's really important at this time is we now need to introduce another character, or reintroduce another character. His name would be David Pudge-Lees. He would be a journalist, and he would work for Postmedia, right? But he'd be publishing under National Post and Ottawa Citizen. And what you'll see is in where the story kind of starts is in 2018. Like right around where my job starts, boom, this person starts posting out of nowhere directed at JDIrving. And it's in tandem with all these other players. Like, it doesn't seem to be a coincidence. It would be a strange coincidence for my events and their events to be coincidence. I know mine are coincidence, so it means that theirs are much less likely to be coincidence. You kind of see what I mean? I know mine are coincidence. I know they're coincidence because I ain't involved with nothing, nobody. Um, so what started happening was this person had in 2018 had started posting these. It seemed like a directed attack at JDIrving, and when I went back and did an assessment, I mean, if I was like an agent or anybody looking at that, I'd be like, "What's this guy? Something's going on here." And then by March, around March 15th of 2019, Saltwire and Chronicle Herald switched to Postmedia as like their source for their articles. And as soon as they did, that same writer under Saltwire, right in Halifax, started slamming and hammering JDIrving and the Canadian government. And it was the way I would categorize it as like it did look like an attack. And JDIrving freaked out at some point, right? And I mean, looking at it now, I'm like, I can see why you might freak out because it does look like they came after you. And this person had written a story about some stuff. I think it had to do with some kind of welds or something on ship, and the government had called JDIrving and gave this reporter's name, something, and then JDIrving, I think, issued a statement that they were going to sue anybody who writes any stories, and then there was this big investigation or something to do with the privacy commissioner who ruled against the government giving the name to JDIrving, and this whole wild thing going on with this individual. At the same time as this whole Mark Norman thing and this whole Postmedia thing, I had no idea any of this was going on. I'm just some bro, I don't know. But it seems like that if you looked at the posting habits, these events happen with this individual on days that were significant with me. And it looks like, I don't know if they thought I was involved in something or they were trying to frame me. But it's way too suspicious. So anyways, this person starts like hammering JDIrving. And so, these events going through May, and then my wallet just magically gets stolen. But something else is going on at this time. So Jean-Michael Blaise is gone. The interim chief is now Robin McNeil, right? Would be Stephen McNeil's brother, right? And if you check at the time, just 3 days after my wallet was stolen, the Chinese ambassador is right in Halifax shaking hands with Stephen McNeil. Now, it doesn't mean anything on its own, but it means something a little bit later on because, like, the consideration of all these players in the one spot, that's too many players concentrated in one spot. Something else is going on here. And so you've got all of this happening, and you've got these back events, with the two Michaels and stuff happening in Canada, and you've got these events happening in Nova Scotia. Now, right beside our Canada's national shipbuilder, it seems like these people are launching an attack towards JDIrving. And Postmedia is, associated with the hack with, well, the executives or previous executives were associated with the hack at the time with Jeff Bezos and what was happening with Kogoshi or Jamal Khashoggi and, the hack with Jeff Bezos. But also going back a little bit further would be the events with Citizens Lab tracking Pegasus infections to friends of Jamal Khashoggi in Canada. And then being targeted by, NSO Group and Black Cube, allegedly. And this would have all been through the news. And this would have all been happening when my job got posted. Like, the coincidence that my job got posted, everything happened like clockwork after, really brings me back to the feeling that my position may have been created to be framed, and that's where this gets derived from. But that's like its whole own, entry into this section. And So you've got all these players seemingly involved, and now you've got this idea of Pegasus floating around, and these same people are kind of targeting JDIrving. So to me, it looks like they were saying, were we in your phones too? How long were we in your phones? Like, it seems like that attack on towards Bezos was a message of terror. It was like advertising, like, if we're in their phone, who else's are we in, and for how long? Right? Because Bezos didn't know for months. And you'll see that, like, he didn't even issue his it was only on February 7th of 2019 that he did his blog post in Medium that was called No Thank You, Mr. Pecker, and that will talk about these issues a little bit more, and I'd recommend you read it. And it talks about how a man in his position can't be extorted or shouldn't be, because if they're trying to extort him, then who can stand up to that? Government? JDIrving? If the richest man in the world can't stand up to it, then who can? And it's a good question, but that's almost what they wanted him to say as a form of advertising. That's what I assume. I mean, what a good plan, really. I mean, if you're going to do it right. Fuck. So that's the way I kind of look at that. So I can see why JDIrving might have been like, hey, something's going on, but I definitely wasn't involved. And why would I go to HR and stuff saying something's going on if I was involved in any of this? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's pretty stupid. Right? And I'm a nobody, so I mean, it's pretty stupid. So here's like why it's so weird is because June 5th I go to pick up my my wallet, and now this Jim Prin guy, who they're talking basically about the same transfer on the day I get my speeding ticket and stuff under these strange circumstances, now his job gets posted with JDIrving on the 17th, so 12 days after I get my wallet back. Right? I don't know this guy. I don't know any of this until much later on, right? And so, you know, he gets his job posting, and this David Pudgley's guy keeps posting, and I think something about French fry plants. I mean, he even posts right on my last day, which looks extremely suspicious, but again, it could just be coincidence, right? So I just kind of like left, came back to my life. I knew something bad happened, and weird stuff continued to happen. Now, what we'll do is there's another video called Emic and Cambridge Analytica, and what's important is you're going to see an overlap here. And this is going to come from July. And it'll explain the Dutch subreddits that I talked about in the beginning of this video. And it'll start to explain what's going to happen next, because it gets much, much more severe and much more obvious that I was in fact targeted. And these people did know that this occurred. I will state, you know, before I go too much further, there's a lot more information to be said here. It's very hard to go over all those months and include all the players. So, you know, like, there are going to be other videos, and there will be opportunity to ask questions about everything that had happened. Yeah. So I think that's enough for this one. So that takes us really from February 4th to would be July 26th, 2019. Right? That's the period I was working. You've got these different events. You know, in summary, I was, it looks like, you know, out of retaliation, I was targeted by the police. It looks like somebody, reasonably the police, were involved in the theft of my wallet. And then there was this job posting for that individual who just happened to need a transfer to JDIrving. Now, you see, where the employees knew that I was really smart, these people couldn't just fire me. Right? They could send a message before, because they could legally just do it, and they still could have legally done it. But if they would have fired somebody that was smart and the employees knew about, the employees would have been like, they know something really bad's going on. But then so would the HR manager and everybody else. So how do you discreetly deny me a job? Right? And if there's an ongoing investigation with HRP, CSIS, and anybody else has to deny me security clearance. They can deny me a job with that, and it looks like my fault. The employees would never know. The HR manager would never know, and it would look clean. How would CSIS or any other institution know that that's what they're doing? They wouldn't. And who's going to trust me over a police officer? Nobody. And Jim Perrin was the commander of the Criminal Investigation Unit and superintendent with Halifax Regional Police. So, I mean, If he said open a case, guess what? It gets open. So, I mean, you could say, well, Scott, maybe they want to close the case. Well, then why wouldn't you just gather details and just close the case? Why would it come into lost and found? Why would you be asking? You're sure you don't know where your wallet's found? It doesn't make sense. And I know it might not sound like it's important, but when you jump forward to November 19th, 2019, and I'll bring the information up here and look at the different events that are going on here with Postmedia, you know, like I said, just popping into Halifax. And then you'll see Toronto Star, again, who published that article, and who were under investigation for collusion. All on this same date as me getting an email from the government. It's extremely suspicious. And that'll be the next video, talking about the period from, you know, July 26th, right through to August 5th and 6th, 2020. It's all right.